The tension that comes in the work is from this notion that these are subjects in conflict who are struggling or able to maintain a kind of routine and a sort of a normalcy, and that creates tension, and that colors their normalcy, that makes it quite perverse, I think. And I am interested in the perverse, but I'm only interested in the perverse in the context of normalcy, in, for example, a middle class context in a piece like Continuity. I shot in 2012, and it's a 41-minute long piece. It's projected on a single screen, and so it feels very conventional. It does have a looped structure, and it follows middle-of-the-road, upper middle class German couple as they drive to a train station in a small sort of town in Germany, and they pick up what appears to be their son, a young man who's dressed in military fatigues, a military uniform, and there is that whole sort of requisite sort of display of emotions that accompanies such scenes in life and in film. We see these parents bring what we think is their son home, and very slowly certain borders are crossed, certain thresholds are, I suppose, transgressed, and we find that there is quite another alternative dynamic happening in this family. They have a dinner together, there's a conversation, and then we see the same couple maybe a day later, maybe a week later, maybe a month later, driving to the train station again, and there awaits another young man dressed in the same fatigues, waiting for them, being picked up, the same sort of emotional situation, but different. They bring him home and they engage in the same choreography, the same sort of routine. So there's a very, I think, structured narrative here. There's this notion of repetition, there's this notion of choreography, there's a notion of what we do with our free time, how we structure our free time when we're sort of middle class people. And the sort of, I think, overall narrative that I came up with for this piece is that, you know, this couple has experienced loss in some respect. That loss could be the loss of a son in conflict, and perhaps they've hired young men to step in and perform his part, his role for them on a weekend sort of basis. But I think the piece contradicts that in some respects, and I think it opens the possibility of any number of competing scenarios, one of which is my scenario, the one I sort of believe in which there was no loss of a son. There may not have been a son, maybe the kids grew up and left the house, and the house is sort of empty, and the relationship is not as good, and the sex is not as good anymore, and something needs to come in to fill the space and to fill that void, to fill the vacuum. And that thing that fills in the space is a hobby or a kind of a choreography, a sort of a ritual that the couple obsessively, repeatedly reenact. And I think that there's a huge amount of freedom in the art world that allows us to create pieces that often stand obliquely to, you know, what we normally consume in terms of film and in terms of TV, or what we consume on the internet. I think that there is a very urgent viability to having that space that allows us to, you know, reflect our world and our society and what we do, and to try to think about new forms of how to reflect it, and to try to make little stumbling experiments with cinematic language or any kind of language. And this is why I'm very comfortable in the art space.